Hi, everybody. This is Neil Allen, the creator of the comic series Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, which you could read for free on my website, zatswan.com. And today I am once again with my girlfriend. Would you like to say hello?
Hello.
Okay, and we're going to be actually discussing an interesting topic, which is why do people hate current DC legacy characters so much? This is something that I saw being discussed online. And I thought it would be interesting for us to put our thoughts forward. I bring my girlfriend along because um, she's not as invested and involved with this stuff as some of the people who are discussing it online. So she kind of offers a different perspective. She's sort of an outsider looking in, a neutral observer, so to speak. And I think it's interesting to get that point of view. And it's not a point of view that I see put forward very much. Oftentimes, when you see people discussing these topics, um, it's among others that are heavily invested in these characters and these worlds. So my girlfriend offers kind of a different perspective on things. So the idea is this. There are original characters like Batman, Bruce Wayne, Superman, Clark Kent, Wonder Woman, Diana Prince, and Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Now, these are the characters that are most associated with those mantles. Like Clark Kent is more associated with the Superman mantle than any other variation of Superman. Yet there are other variations of Superman. There's, for instance, a character called Val Zod, who is a Superman. He is an alternate universe Superman. He is a black Superman. There are other characters like there's the character say we think of Peter Parker as Spider-Man traditionally, yet there is another Spider-Man named Miles Morales who technically is a mixed race Spider-Man. I think he's mainly coded black, but that's a whole other discussion. Technically, he's a mixed race Spider-Man, and what happens is that these derivative characters, the ones that are being introduced these days, are frequently people of color. So they are the comic company's way of like adding diversity to their line. We kind of discussed this a bit somewhat in our cyborg video. The concept is that the readership that these companies like DC Comics and Marvel have are not very open to new characters. They just like reading Superman and Batman, Spider-Man, and Wonder Woman. However, the companies realize that it's in their best interest to feature characters that are not white, that are from different backgrounds. So to kind of work these newer characters in rather than create a completely new character with their own identity, with their own superhero alias, with their own world building, they will create a mixed race Spider-Man or a black Superman or a black Batman or a black Aquaman, a whole other character. It's not like Clark Kent is turned black, although weird stuff like that does happen sometimes. Rather, it's a whole other black version of Superman that's their own character, and then that person becomes Superman. What often happens is they will sometimes replace the original character, like they will replace the original white character, like, and then the say Captain America in the comic books becomes black. So they're reading this new black version of Captain America. Or in his case, it's not a whole new character. I'll use another example. In Captain America's case, it was like a character that had been around for a long time and then just assumed the mantle of Captain America. But what often happens is they'll introduce an entirely new character suddenly. and then this character becomes the new black version or whatever race version of this traditional traditionally white superhero. So does all that make sense so far? I know it's quite a bit to take in.
It makes sense to me so far, and I have a couple of thoughts on it. Also, kind of in reaching back to some of the other conversations that we've had, it's made me think of like different ideas, kind of having this other information now added to it. Um, I think for for one thing, I can see why people might be upset about their characters that they've known and kind of gotten used to being changed. Um, but then it kind of also made me think there are things that are already happening that the comic community is not necessarily happy with, yet they're still reading the comics. So theoretically, even though they may not like a new character, a totally new character being introduced, they're probably still going to read it because they're not liking what's happening now and they're still reading. So really DC and Marvel and other comic companies have the opportunity to represent all types of demographics in a way that I think is it's less of like a cop out, like, oh, we'll just take this character that everyone already likes and we'll just like change it. Um, they can kind of give them their own character, which I think would be nice. And people are still going to read about it, I'm sure, because if for nothing else, morbid curiosity, like they might not go in thinking they're going to like it, but they still need to know what's going to happen, you know?
I think what's happening is now teamed with other issues with the comics, people are starting to reach their breaking point. So the topic is, why do people hate current DC legacy characters so much? We can apply this to Marvel as well. But people are like complaining about this a lot online. Like, we don't like these characters. And what you will often see is that people will say that they're trying to push agendas on them, like the companies are trying to push their multicultural agendas on readers, and they're just not looking for that, and they're not looking for their favorite characters to be caught up in this agenda and to suffer from it. They're just looking to read Peter Parker, the White Spider-Man, Hal Jordan, the White Green Lantern. They're not as interested in reading the Latina Green Lantern. Now, where this often causes a debate that has people on opposite extremes of a spectrum, and that creates a problem. Um, so the people who will say, well, in effect, they only want to read the White Green Lantern. And then other people on the other side will say, well, you're bigoted. You're not like, you're just bigoted and you're complaining and you're toxic because they're not interested in reading the Latina Green Lantern or the Black Green Lantern. I told you before how many various Green Lanterns there are. There are a lot.
Yeah.
So on one side, you have people saying, like, stop pushing these agendas in the comics. It's like contributing to the destruction of this industry, the sales going down and plummeting. And on the other side, they're saying that, oh, the people just saying that are just toxic and they need to go away and they're racists and bigots.
Well, okay. I know that's a very easy conclusion to jump to. And in some cases, it might be right. Um, but I'm very open minded and always try to see everyone's point of view before I jump to conclusions. Um, so I guess I would say um, that's one possible thing that's happening is those people might have bigoted ideas or racist ideas. The other thing could just be that they are just used to, I mean, the company had at some point bigoted and racist ideas, and that's why we have this situation where like every character is white and kind of from a similar background. But then those are the characters that people grew up with and are used to and like love as that character. So the person themselves that's reading these comics might not be bigoted or racist, that like as their own personal beliefs. They're just used to that character, and that's the character that they've come to enjoy. I think that's like
Right.
possible. Like maybe they're fine with other culturally diverse characters, just not, it's just like that character is one that they have grown up with and really attached to, and they want that character to be what that character is, and just make more like that's probably more of their view, is like they should just make more characters to represent other people, not change the characters that are already there.
I understand. So
Because I do
that
think
that
like the representation's important in any industry, and because the comic industry is traditionally like white characters, it's really important to introduce new characters that are more culturally diverse and represent more than one, group of people. I think where some of the debate comes between readers is that you have kind of the classic readers who it just really enjoy the old characters and the way that they are, but are fine with new characters being introduced. Maybe they personally won't read all of them that are introduced, but they would be fine with more characters coming about. And then you have people who want to see, themselves represented. And they may not be picky about whether it's new characters or old characters being changed. They just want to see representation. And I think sometimes,
right.
especially when it comes to race or culture, um, people can tend to side with one extreme or the other and jump to conclusions very quickly and feel kind of all or nothing about it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big problems. And you're right about that. Like there is sort of people jumping, like picking. I've noticed people, fans like really picking sides. Like just from my own observations, I've seen like say readers who will take gay or they will take black any kind of way they get it. However they trample on history or another character to get that, from what it seems to me, they do not care as long as it's black or gay. And I'm just taking examples that I know personally that I've seen. They just, okay, they're all in. If it tramples on a 50, 60, 80-year history to get that, they don't care. Um, on the other hand, you have people who, what you're saying is that they would be okay with these new characters coming in. But the reality is that even if they're okay with that, they're not interested in that. So if you introduce um, Super Piano Man, and it's like, say, a diverse character from some background, okay, the people reading Superman or Batman, they're like, okay, Super Piano Man's great. As long as you don't bother me with that some kind of way, that's fine. They're okay with that character existing somewhere, but they're not going to read him. So that's the issue. Super Piano Man will like fail. So it's like they don't care about that as long as he's not bothering them. Um, so they can say that they're okay with these characters coming in, but as long as these characters don't disrupt their smooth world, they don't care. And what happens is they are not going to go read these new characters, and these characters end up not working.
Well, it's fine that they're not reading those characters. Not everybody likes the same thing. I mean, that's like forcing someone to listen to a certain kind of music. Um, and I know a lot of people feel very differently about it, but I feel like you don't have to be interested in the same things as everybody else and enjoy the same type of entertainment as everybody else. As for something like Super Piano Man failing, I that's not necessarily up to the readers that aren't interested in him. Like the readers that are interested in him can make him succeed. And DC and Marvel, if they actually care, they only care about their business. If they actually cared about kind of humanitarian subjects, um, they could have like Super Piano Man, and then they do crossovers all the time. I mean, you had like Superman versus Batman. They could put him in other comics and like introduce him more, but they're just all about kind of that instant gratification. If he's not a major hit right off the bat, they're going to pull him. That's not really a failing on the reader's part as much as it is on the industry's part, I think. It takes time for people, a lot of times, it takes time for people to hear about it, to finally be exposed to this. And sometimes by the time they've pulled Super Piano Man, a year down the road, someone will come across them and be like, wow, when did this become a thing? And I mean, there are things that people discover that are 10 years old and
Yeah.
maybe love it, but it took a lot of time for them to be exposed to it. So if the company really cared, you know, they would have these, they would make these new characters and do the PR and put them with other well-known characters to get them exposed to the readers. Like they could do the work and it could be a big hit, but it takes more than one comic or one movie or whatever it is. And a lot of these industries nowadays are looking for like a one-hit wonder where they just blow up and go viral and get huge and they make a ton of money from it. And like that's what I mean, everybody's ideal would be put in a little bit of work and get a huge reward, of course.
Yeah,
that's that's a great way to go about it, but that's not always realistic.
mhm. I
So
think really the issue here is that, like, I'm going to offer I kind of set up the stage here and you've given some thoughts. I will, like, tell you what I think is going on here.
okay.
For the most part, I believe that these comic readers that don't want to support that complain about this and don't want to support like a black Batman, I don't think that those people are racist or bigots. Generally speaking, I do believe you have racists and bigots in there because, you know, um, if you're going to complain about if people are going to complain about a black Batman, I mean, wouldn't it stand to reason that racists and bigots would trickle in there and also complain about a black Batman?
Yeah.
However, generally, I don't think the people complaining about that are. I think the people complaining about that are people who are not interested in reading about a black Batman because the concept of a black Batman doesn't interest them, who don't like the idea of Batman being watered down by all these derivative characters popping up all over the place, and who are probably getting tired of some of these hokey methods that the comic companies are doing to push things like diversity. So, segueing into that, I do think that there's a way. Are you thinking something?
Yes, I am. Some of the
Okay.
things that you have just said, I think, can be taken really out of context. Firstly, I don't think it's that they're not interested in a black Batman, as in they don't think a black character is okay. I think they're fine with the idea of a black character. And if Batman would have been black from the start, they would have been fine with that. What they're not okay with isn't a black Batman. What they're not okay with is changes to the original Batman. And what comes with that is you get kind of what's happened with this Green Lantern situation. You get 50 different versions of one character, and the character kind of loses meaning because they're everyone, they do everything, they can be anything, and any of their choices or characteristics are no longer matter because there's just so many other possibilities. It's like, pick and choose. Would you say that you agree with that or no?
I agree with that. One of the things about superheroes, including Green Lantern, even though that there are Green Lantern is part of an organization of Green Lanterns, but one of the things you frequently see in superhero literature is examples of exceptional people.
Right.
Like Batman is an exceptional person. He experienced a tragedy that pushed him to become exceptional at many different things so that that tragedy he can do what he can to hopefully prevent somebody else going through the same thing that he went through, you know.
The way you worded it could have been taken a little bit the wrong way. And to be honest, my ADHD is acting up, and I don't remember what else you said after that.
um I think my original train of thought is that the people complaining about this stuff generally are not racist. They just think these are legitimately bad ideas that are watering down and contributing to the downfall of the industry.
Right. And I just remembered the other thing you said. You said pushing the agenda of diversity.
Hmm.
Now, I feel like that is also poor wording because I think anybody can argue that pushing diversity is not a bad thing. It's important to recognize and accept diversity as that is reality, that's part of our world. And, there's kind of the idea of like everyone, nobody's like lesser than or anything like that. I think whenever you say pushing the agenda of diversity, it kind of makes it sound like they're pushing this bad idea or like this unwanted thing onto people, this thing that shouldn't just be accepted by everyone. And I think everyone should accept diversity. Um, so that kind of conflicts me on like how do the readers exactly feel, because on the one hand it's not bad to have diversity and the agenda of diversity, like in air quotes I'll put it, um, isn't like a bad thing to be pushed onto people in some
Wait,
sense.
wait. Now, see, I have to interrupt you there. I'm sorry, but there is the problem. People don't like things pushed on them. So you can have a good agenda.
But they live in this world and they have to be realistic that diversity is all around them because there's more than one type of person. So it's not like we're force them. Bleh. It's not that we're forcing them to read a bunch of comics that they don't want, but there will be comics out there that show diversity. Now they can pick and choose whatever they want, uh,
Okay. That,
but it's going to be a part of things. And it's just like if they leave their house and go to the store, they might run into a Mexican American. They might run into an African American. They might run into a deaf person. You know,
okay.
they're
Right.
gonna have to deal with those things and accept that those are like possibilities. And I don't know. I feel like there can be comics out there that are like all one way or the other, but there's gonna be comics that aren't as well. So that's just to the reader's discretion. Now, if the company decides to take their comics in the direction of diversity, then and the reader doesn't like it, I think two things. Firstly, they should probably just take a look at themselves and make sure that like why don't you like it? Because that can be revealing. Not always, but it can be. And then secondly, don't read the comic if you don't like the comic. It's
Right.
literally that simple.
It's yes, but when we get to this kind of is going to my main thoughts, and I am going to stand by pushing the agenda of diversity because it where this problem is coming from is how these companies choose to do this. They're doing it in a way where people do feel this is pushed on them. When you take a favorite character of theirs, um, like a Tony Stark, Iron Man, that's who Iron Man is, and
Yeah.
you replace him as Iron Man with a black girl, um, They are looking to read Iron Man comics, right? That's what they're in the habit of doing. Suddenly, for reasons of diversity, not even for reasons of diversity, they are replacing Tony Stark with Riri Williams, a black girl. Um, Now the readers are expected by the company. The readers of Tony Stark are now expected, we have to assume, expecting to read Riri Williams. Do you feel that it is right or wrong to say that that was pushed on those readers?
I feel like they can still read Tony Stark. There's, I'm sure, thousands of issues of Tony Stark. Um, I understand there's like this injustice feeling of Tony Stark was kind of just ripped away from them, and it would be nice if they would have continued Tony Stark and just introduced another character. So I can agree there is like a better way to go about it from the company's perspective, or from them. They could have gone about it a different way, that maybe would be better. And if they're expecting their readership to continue with this totally different idea, they're the ones that are delusional, because not everyone is going to like that and continue reading that. They might find other comics or go back to other characters. Um,
Okay, so you said that they can continue.
that going from one character to a totally different one who's supposed to be like in the same role, I can understand how that is frustrating, how they've lost this character that they have a long readership history with, that they really like, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And I get that that's really frustrating, but I think you have to be very careful in the way that you word what it is you're frustrated about, because this is such a sensitive topic. Just just complaining, well, now Iron Man's a black woman. It's like, okay, well, a lot of people initially are going to be like, what's wrong with a black woman being Iron
What's
Man?
what's wrong with a black woman being Iron Man? We'll just stay away. We'll keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, from my perspective, nothing. There's nothing wrong with a black woman superhero. It's just the fact that the hero that they were reading is now just completely gone and been replaced. There wasn't a transitionary period. And I'm assuming because it was just a diversity move, they didn't really even give it like a good storyline to transition. Like, there are multiple things that could be wrong with it, but I think the bottom line is that a lot of people are just going to assume it has to do with gender and race. So you have to be careful to really articulate what the problem is. Isn't the gender and race, it's the loss of this other character, the bad storyline to transition, the fact that they're, well, and even we've talked about with some of the legacy characters, and I think another video is, um, it's really just a cheap move on the company's part. Like, they're not putting any effort into it. They're just changing the skin color. They're not putting any effort into it. They're just changing the gender.
And
And I think that that is kind of like a spit in the face in a way, that these other groups that are outside of like a white male, um, that are being ascribed to a traditionally white male character, are just kind of meh. We'll just make it black. We'll just turn him into a woman. We'll
but
just,
you remember,
and it feels kind of disingenuous from the company. And I
yeah,
think what a lot of people could be upset about too.
but then you have those other people on the other end of the spectrum. They're like, I don't care. This is a black character. I'm 1,000% behind it. Those people do exist. And if
Yeah,
anybody comes and says, well, I don't like this, then, they stand the risk of being labeled a bigot by, say, the person who's like, hey, this is a black character. I'm just 10,000% behind it just because it's a black character. And I don't care that this is trampling on readers of Tony Stark or readers of Iron Man.
right.
I'm just here for the black character because they're black.
Both of those people are in the wrong. The first person is in the wrong because they're not really communicating what their issue is entirely. They're leaving a lot up to assumption, and assumption is always a bad thing. I mean, I think just about everyone that I know is heard the saying, assuming makes an ass out of you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that being clear in your communication, especially when it is so close to such a tricky and touchy topic, it's a lot of T's, alliteration. When it's so close to a touchy and tricky topic, really have to be clear what it is that you're actually upset about.
Well, I am going to.
I just want to finish this. The other person is also in the wrong because they're placing assumptions, they're not asking questions, and they don't seem very open-minded to the, or considerate either. So I feel like
I
both
see.
do better.
I think you're right in that. I am going to stand by what I said as far as pushing something on readers because that's what I feel the company's doing, and this is kind of bringing the whole thing together. This has to do diversity in and of itself is fine and good. That's how I feel. Um, I think where things are going wrong is how these companies are implementing diversity. I do think they are pushing it on people. The way in which they are implementing diversity is careless, aggressive in a bad way, and it's almost like they are encouraging this sort of drama and conflict with the way they are doing it. Whether that's intentional or not, I'm not entirely sure. In some cases, it seems to be, but not in all. Some of it, I think, is just ham-fisted.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think the way that the company is doing it with bad storylines, like you said, the storylines they're expecting really, really quick results. And they are impatient. That like lends to a lot of the issues we see. So we see bad storylines, characters that are suddenly dropped without given enough of a chance to like succeed to catch on with readers. Um, and we're seeing it done in a way where loyal readers are going to feel disenfranchised because the characters that they are drawn to are oftentimes being sidelined or having to share the spotlight with new characters that pop out of nowhere that readers just are not characters that have not built up that loyalty with the readers. The readers are loyal to the traditional characters.
Mm-hmm.
So when this new character pops up, who's obviously added for diversity reasons, like that is so it seems like, okay, you have an agenda when you're doing this. And a lot of times the agenda, the agenda can seem not profitable. Like this is not what the audience that you have wants. Like it's not that diversity is bad. They just don't want this new character, or they don't like this storyline. And so the addition of these legacy characters really is not boosting the sales of these comics in many cases. Like you can take a look at the numbers and the sales aren't going up from this usually. Now there are some isolated cases where that may happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that Marvel and DC like are businesses and the people who are actually arguing against all these changes will often do so from a point of view like this is not profitable. There's even a saying, go woke, go broke, because this stuff isn't doing well. And I'm going to take this much closer to home for you, actually. This isn't the same thing. This isn't a legacy character. This isn't an example of a POC legacy character. This would be an example of race bending, which is a related subject, and in my opinion, even worse. Now you've liked to talk. Now you're a fan of. You've talked before, like how you're a fan of Disney and Disney princesses, right?
I knew you were gonna bring that up. I
Hmm.
knew how the Little Mermaid. They did the new Little Mermaid as a black mermaid.
Well, let me set the stage up even better. So you've talked how you're a fan of Disney and Disney princesses, right?
Yes,
You've talked before here about how you're a redhead, right?
yes.
That has a lot to do with your identity, correct? I mean, not everything to do with your identity, but I know you. I know we've talked before. Being a redhead is a pretty decent sized part of your identity, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's your favorite Disney princess?
I like all of them, but when I was younger, it was definitely Ariel, the Little Mermaid.
Okay,
I I could easily argue she still is.
right. Now, what are what do you think it was about Ariel? I'm sure there were a lot. I'm not just looking for one answer here, but what do you think it was that drew you so much to Ariel?
I
Can
mean,
you give me,
as a little girl, it was that she looked like me, the red hair mostly. Um,
okay. And it was that you liked her story too. You
I do.
liked,
I liked her
yeah.
story. I like everything about the Little Mermaid story.
So
Uh,
it's not just that she's a redhead. So what that's an interesting point. I'm just going to make a brief aside. You can't just throw a black or an Asian character out there. The character still has to be good, still has to be a good story. And that's oftentimes why their characters fail. They're done lazily, they're done cheaply, and they're not great characters. So if Ariel was a crap character in a crap movie, you probably still wouldn't have been drawn to Ariel too much. Um,
Personally, no, I would not have been.
right. So, okay, like I said, I'm bringing this closer to home.
Which is
There,
what I can understand because with the new Little Mermaid movie, I actually I did watch it, and my mom and I watched it because we both liked The Little Mermaid. It's like some of our favorite movies.
and your mom is a redhead too, by the way.
Now, to be honest, we were much more upset about Scuttle, which is like a bird in the
Hmm.
it's a seabird. I don't know if it's a seagull. I think it's a seagull. Scuttle's a seagull.
Hmm.
We were much more upset about the Scuttle change. Scuttle was awful in this new movie. Nothing like Scuttle is supposed to be. I wasn't upset about the Little Mermaid being a black character now. I was more upset about that and the fact that there wasn't the kitchen scene because that's like the best scene. Um, and they didn't do the kitchen scene in this movie. I actually thought it was really interesting that they changed it, the story, but the thing that made it the most interesting are that all the changes coincided, like that the story took place in what seemed like maybe Barbados or like Jamaica, or it was kind of a the Little Mermaid was a black character, and the people on the island were in a tropical and more traditionally black environment, or what it seemed like.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought it was interesting that it all came together. There was, mm, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, like congruence in the story.
I see.
Um,
Right.
and I liked it as a storyline on its own, but I prefer the original Little Mermaid personally. For myself, I prefer the original one better. Um, and I do remember that there was at one point in time, like the Little Mermaid TV show, there was a character, I think her name was Gabrielle. She was a
Hmm.
black death mermaid, and I really liked her as a character. I wish that they would have done a lot more with her because she was like a genuinely good character, but you didn't really
Hmm.
see her very much, and she kind of died off. And I think that that's really tragic. Um, and I would have really liked if they did more with that character because like she's her own original character with her own story, her own unique experiences, and if they would have, done more things with her and even introduced other characters like other mermaids with different backgrounds and stuff too, that would have been great. Not, but to clarify, like I'm not upset with the new Little Mermaid at all, but I am upset if that becomes the Little Mermaid and the original Ariel just gets completely washed away.
Well,
which is
guess what? I have
being
to stop you there.
okay.
They're coming out. This I'm not an expert. I'm actually looking into it, some of it now. I don't follow this. Um, okay. So the budget of this movie was got almost $300,000. Um, oh, I'm sorry. No, no, it was almost $300 million. Massive difference. I'm
Holy
just
crap.
kind of there
For
are a lot of things going through my mind right now. It made $569 million. So this movie actually, I know one number is bigger than the other, but this movie wasn't profitable. It didn't do well at the box office. So
that
because it has to make considerably more than its budget to be profitable. Does that make
it,
sense?
200 million more than its budget. How is that not
It
considered?
has, I mean, I really, this isn't necessarily the place to go into all of this, but there's a
It's
movie budget, and then
profitable,
there,
makes sense, but
yeah, there's the budget for actually creating the film, and then there's an advertising budget, and that's also going to be astronomical. Um, for these like really expensive movies to be profitable, they have to make considerably more than their budget. Like I don't feel like going into the whole thing, but that's kind of how it works. So I'm not an expert on this, but what they're going to do, this movie here did not work out, but my understanding, I'm looking into it, they're going to continue with a Black Ariel, Little Mermaid animated 2024. Um, new Little Mermaid show.
yeah, I know they're continuing with it. Now, that doesn't bother me. I just won't keep up with it. I'll continue watching the Ariel that I personally know and like. Um, in my opinion, and I think this goes back to DC and Marvel too. It would have been better and it would have been more interesting to me to keep the original Ariel, to introduce another character with, a black mermaid, or keep Gabrielle and bring her back, or introduce an Indian mermaid and make her another character, and just expand the universe in which this is taking place in, do some world bending, make some world
World building.
building. Yes, sorry. Do some world building, have new characters introduced. Like now I'm getting interested. Just replacing a character that I really enjoy and love, not so much.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm saying I understand the frustration that the comic people who their characters are being replaced. I understand the frustration, but I think it's important to communicate the specific thing that you're frustrated about,
Right.
or it can come across as bigoted or racist, or it could just be more easily manipulated into being,
Or
because,
maybe
you know,
on the other hand, people should also, on the other side, not just jump to conclusions about other people just
yeah.
because they don't like something.
And I
You,
think it's really important too. It goes from both sides. You need to ask
yeah,
questions. If you can't assume that you understand, you have to ask questions to make sure you're understanding.
yes, and to bring things back to my personal view, I think this I actually I blame the companies more than I blame the viewers, the fans, the readers. The idea of a black Ariel to me is stupid. I'm just going to come out and say that because Ariel is such an iconic character who already meant so much to people, and little girls with red hair identified with her. I mean, I know because I know your story, I know your history. I think it's pretty lame to take that away from them
Yeah.
to service another group. I don't think that it's not that I don't believe that group should be serviced. I think that if anything, that group should be serviced better with an original character that you put just as much effort into as you put into Ariel, you
Right.
know?
I mean, I understand like the thought of it, of, well, this character's not going to be as popular right away and blah blah blah, but you can use your other characters. I mean, Disney's famous for this, for showing a new princess with the old princesses, and that's just the way they've always done it, because they're like they're in a group. They're individual, but they're also in a group. They're all Disney princesses, so they're not really using them as like a stepping stone in the way of like everything hinges upon the old princess. But okay, I'm trying to think of how to say this. They use their older stories to help uplift their newer stories, and they always have done that.
Yeah,
So, and
I understand what you mean.
it doesn't matter what the story is. So it's not just like I'm not saying that diverse characters need a white character in order to be popular. That's what I was trying to avoid, like that confusion, because that's not what I'm saying. They've always used their older stories to uplift their new stories, even if it's a white character that's the new story. Um, they just, I think that's kind of smart marketing, because you're saying, hey, you know and love these stories. Well, here's another one to add to the collection. No matter what it is, it's just one big Disney group.
So I also noticed that, I mean, I think you should be commended, if anything, for trying to be as careful as you can with your wording. Like, that is a good thing. But don't you think there's also something a bit silly about having to add all these asterisks to what you say, to make all these disclaimers about what you say, instead of being able to say, I don't like this change to the character. I liked the previous version better. Like, essentially, that's kind of where you sit. Yet, oh, we have to like now make all
I
like
understand, and I have two things to say about that. The
a
first,
giant paragraph of disclaimers.
yes, it is silly that I have to do that. However, I'm realistic and I know how people react nowadays. And in order to just preemptively prevent argument and assumption and me coming out looking like a bad person, which I never intended, I am saying those things because I'm just realistic about how people are and the way the world works. But it
Right.
is very silly that I have to do that. I do think that. And I think that that says more about the people who are reacting to me than it does about me as a person.
So what some people would say is that those people should not be accommodated. They should be held accountable for their, you know, for their knee-jerk reactions.
They should. They should calm down, be more open minded, and learn to ask questions for full understanding.
Mhm. Okay,
I
so
to do it away in the middle, like, um, I think kind of coming to the middle is the best way. Both parties should communicate fully what they mean and ask questions if they don't think they understand fully. Both parties should do that.
right. Yeah, right. Ideally, that's what should be done. So honestly, I think that unsurprisingly, from my own observations, there is blame on both sides of the debate. The people, they're pretty outrageous and but their actions are unproductive on both sides of it, specifically for the comic thing, from what I've seen. And I think that primarily the fault rests with these companies, that these corporations that own these properties, and how the corporations are going about implementing diversity. I think many times not it's not done in the best way for anybody, honestly.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that of the three parties involved, kind of the readers that want things to stay the same, the readers that want all the changes, and the company, I would agree with you that the company, the industry, is probably the most at blame for the way that they've gone about things.
yeah,
Um, and kind of, I never think it's right to step on people's toes. So to erase a character isn't to erase a beloved character that people really love and identify with is never.
like Ariel.
Yes, like Ariel. I don't think it was right for them to erase Ariel to make this change. I think it would have been better to introduce a new character.
Right.
That's my opinion. It would have been better to introduce a new character. And I think it's more fair to all parties involved, because then you're not hurting the audience who already loved and identified with Ariel, and you're doing a better justice to the audience who doesn't have representation that you're trying to now represent. Because instead of just saying, oh, you're not worth my time and effort, I'm just going to change her skin color and be done with it. You're actually showing them that they deserve proper representation and time and effort too.
Okay, so then what do you think about, say, the people who are like, hey, it's black, I'm supporting it, because it's black, and I'm just going to support it because it's black. And those people, believe me, they do exist. I encounter them sometimes.
They do exist, and I would say that they don't put as much care into it as they might think they do, because that's also kind of a lazy way of supporting something too. In my opinion, you can think about like historical figures. You have some historical figures of a certain demographic that have been really, really good, and some historical figures that have been really, really bad.
Hmm. Right,
And
I see what you're saying.
going to support both of them equally and in the same just because they're of the same demographic? No, probably not.
Some of these people,
Yeah, I mean it's that's kind of what they're doing is they're saying, oh well the character is gay, so I'm just going to support that character, even if that gay character is not doing a justice to the community, even
Mhm.
if it's not a well written character. And I just don't think that's a good way to go about it because that could easily spread more stereotypes, that could easily cause more people to be upset with that demographic. um,
More people to be upset with that. Well, yeah, it does get people.
People upset with any demographic. I mean, there are people who hate every category of people who hate gay
Mhm.
people who hate black people who hate white people who hate Mexicans. Like, there are always going to be people that don't like you no matter what you are.
Mhm. That's
And you
true.
just understand that that's normal and it's okay. It's more important for you to surround yourself with the people who are supportive and to build your own confidence than to try to change everyone's opinion to like you, because that's never going to happen.
Right, right.
So,
So yeah, I think we basically summed things up. The best things for the companies to do is to create original characters. Maybe
mhm,
not everyone will succeed. We understand that. Not every white character succeeds. Create original characters with the same care and effort and creativity that was put into characters like Superman and Ariel and Batman, and then get behind those characters, promote them, do what you can to expose readers to them in ways that aren't obtrusive to the readers.
mhm.
So that's what I say when I mean forced upon them. I do stand by that. I do think the companies I do think that a black Ariel was forced upon people. True.
In
People
essence, yes, if you're wanting to watch this and that's your only option for a new Little Mermaid movie, then yeah, that's it. But nobody's forcing you to read these comics. Nobody's
nope.
forcing you to.
Well, obviously not. Not someone's not coming in with a magnum and saying you're going to sit down and like read these comics or else. But if somebody is used to collecting action comics or something, or Superman, that's like, and that's their hobby. Their hobby is collecting this book,
Mhm,
um, because they love Superman. And then suddenly Superman is taken out the comic and replaced with a whole nother character, a whole nother background. You have put that reader in a spot. They're like, I didn't like this. I like Superman. I like Clark Kent. And now it's like I'm expected to read Joe Williams, and I'm sorry, I know I like to collect action comics, but I really don't like what they're doing here. You put that reader in a dilemma, and I personally
okay.
think it's stupid and bad business to put your readers in dilemmas like that. You've taken your loyal reader and now put him in a situation where that person is they want to continue collecting your book. They want to continue loving your comics. But you put them in a spot where you've just taken away their favorite character. You put this other diverse character in their spot, and now they're going to look suspicious. if they say, hey, I don't like this and I don't want to read this anymore, then the people on the other side is like, no, 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 you're a bigot, and then, I'm going to lecture you and make all these assumptions about you. That's kind of what's happening for a lot of the people here, a lot of the
Yeah.
readers. Um,
Well, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how people react to everything we've said. Um, I'm hoping, I'm really hoping that they heard the part where I multiple times said you should ask questions and make sure you fully understand what the person's trying to get across. I think both of us have done our best to like explain things. So hopefully no one's like jumping to conclusions, and it'll be interesting to hear other people's opinions and views though, because I also know not everyone's going to agree with us, even if what we're saying isn't necessarily bad per se. Everybody still has their own opinions. So
hmm. Well, where I can anticipate,
might be happy with the legacy characters, and who knows.
um, yeah, I guess there are some people who like them. It's really a case by case basis, I would say. Some people like some of them, don't like others, but in the long run, I think that these characters, ultimately, the way that Marvel and DC are implementing them and using them has been detrimental. There have been some successes, some. Like, I'm not going to come out here and say Miles Morales isn't a successful character. I like, and ultimately, I wouldn't say that. I think he has had successes, but for every there have been few successes and lots of failures. And I know that things just work like that sometimes. Um,
Mhm.
like not every band, gets famous and sells, 80 million records or whatnot, like for everyone that does that, there are who knows how many that fall to the wayside, for example. But
Right.
ultimately, I do think that the companies have been doing things in a way that has disenfranchised a lot of their readers, annoyed a lot of their readers, and has sort of lowered the stock of their companies, because they've been putting out so many lazy, bad storylines to accommodate these lazy characters. Like,
Yeah.
oh, suddenly I want an East Indian Flash. Okay, well, how do I, shoehorn that in there all of a sudden? And then these characters stack up because they're not successful. They're like, okay, let's try another diverse Flash, and then another, and then they stack up, and you have this glut of like characters, and most of them nobody cares to see. So I think like things like that have kind of lowered the worth of Flash, for example. Green Lantern not worth a whole lot because, everyone and their cousin is Green Lantern now. Like having 5 billion Supermans doesn't raise the prestige of Superman. You know what I mean? To
Right.
me, it lowers it. Um, so I think that the companies have kind of told a lot of bad stories to accommodate these lazy characters. I think they've created a glut of characters that kind of lowers the stock of the intellectual properties. And I think that they have angered, alienated, and disenfranchised a lot of their readers. I think all these things have contributed to lower interest in their comics, which has translated to lower sales. But I also know that there are a lot of other issues that plague the comic industry. It's not just this issue. There are other
Yeah.
massive problems like distribution and so on and so forth. But I do think that this does hold a spot. It's not like this isn't um, a factor. I do think this is a factor in the current negative state of the comic industry. Diversity in and of itself, again, a great thing. It's great when it's done well. I just think that these companies have not been handling it in a good way. And like, I mean, I can tell you that personally. Like, I always thought, like, when I was younger, it would be so cool to see, you know, more diversity, honestly. Because
Yeah.
I liked reading these comics and I didn't see a whole lot of characters that looked like me. Um, But when I actually got some of that diversity, I was like, you know what? I actually don't think I like this. So it's kind of, I think it's not the diversity that's the problem. It's the companies ham-fisted, lazy, and the companies are basically lazy at implementing it, which causes a whole slew of issues.
Yeah. Well, and again, because you're the type of person that you want a good story. So
Hmm.
it doesn't matter that the character's diverse, if the story's not good.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a lot of times that's what happens is they introduce diversity, but then there's nothing behind it. There's no good storyline. There's no thought provoking like
Yeah.
question. There's just nothing behind it
No
really.
good world building. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, we should close this up.
Okay.
What people's reactions are, but at the same time, like I'm willing to see what people think, of course, but at the same time, um, we have to stay authentic to ourselves and,
Yeah.
like what we think is what we think, and I think that we stand by it. So,
Unless
um,
it makes like some really good logical points without, bashing on me. I feel like this is kind of where my mind is at, but I'm not to say it couldn't be changed. I just don't think it will be.
yeah, I think that we're open to hearing what people have to say. I don't want to like come across like that, but I guess what I'm saying is that we can't be too like afraid or like worried. Like I do think because that's not conducive to discussion. You know what I mean? Like so I guess that's what I was getting at. But anyway, do you have anything more to add?
No, I think this is probably a good point to end.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening to what we have to say on this topic. And if you are interested in diverse characters, then you can try reading my comic, Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian, for free at zatswan.com. I do hope you stop by. And we will talk to you again very soon. Take care.